What's up, Whisper Nation? We're back at it. Week 4 waiver wire is here. If you need help, make sure you stick it right here on the Fantasy Whispers, because we'll tell you exactly who you need to pick up, and more importantly, who you need to drop right here on this episode of the Waiver Wire, Week 4.
Right here.
What's up, Whisper Nation? What's up, Big Travie? Week 4 is upon us, man. It's been wild. Thankfully, this past week was not as heavy on the injuries as Week 3 was, but it's okay. There are still some guys that we're going to tell you should go and pick up. Maybe you should stash for a little bit later on in the season. But before we got to do that, I got to tell you who's giving you this advice, and that is my main man, Big Travie. You can find him on Twitter at Big Travie TFW, and I'm your host for this show. You can find me on Twitter at Johnny_GameTime. But we are the Fantasy Whisperers, and we're here to give you fantasy advice throughout the whole entire year, not just today, not just on this episode, but throughout the whole season, and we're here to have fun. So if you like to enjoy fantasy football, you like to talk fantasy football, well, make sure you hit that subscribe, make sure you hit that bell so you get notified whenever we put out new content, which is pretty much daily, Travis, around here at the Fantasy Whispers. But once again, they didn't come here for me to jibber jabber. They came here for those waiver wire gems, Travis. So let's dive into it. We'll jump into the running backs first here, because everyone wants themselves some running backs. So, Travis, is there a true waiver wire guy that you would go and grab at the running back position this week?
Yeah, so, look, I try to build the article in such a way that I'm going to rank these players by priority, how I would kind of do that. And usually that means running backs go first, because most leagues are going to have a priority on running backs, given the thirst at the position. I did want to talk about COVID a little bit. We've got the situation arising with Minnesota and Tennessee. We've got them halting practice for the time being. So monitor that closely. We've got this offseason causing a lot of soft tissue issues because of, their conditioning. And so that means the waiver wire is more important than ever, Johnny. And so I try to give you guys this list every week. It comes out on Tuesday morning. It's on the website, thefantasywhispers.com. But we're talking running backs. We're talking the top of that list. And right now, for me this week, it's Caros Hyde. We saw Chris Carson get injured. We saw the Dallas Cowboys defensive tackle Tristan Hill kind of roll up on him and take that leg, and dirty or not, it looked bad, rolled it over, and we have a situation arising here where Chris Carson avoided major injury, but is likely to be out 1 to 2 weeks, maybe 3, per Adam Schefter. That MRI for Carson revealed no significant damage, but now Caros Hyde is thrust into the starting role, and for this team, that is valuable. For the Seattle Seahawks, who push the ball down the field and score 35 or more points in all 3 games so far this season, only they and the Green Bay Packers have done so. So do I want the starting running back for that team? Yes, I do, especially if I lost a CMC or a Saquon Barkley, and I'm building my roster out to spot start a guy. This is the guy you do it. And then you look at the next 2 matchups, Johnny, facing the Miami Dolphins, the Minnesota Vikings. You love to see that. And so for me, Caros Hyde topped the list for running backs this week.
All right, the running back 2 that you have listed here is in a muddied situation, but if you put him on your roster and played him this week or played against him this week, you're probably pretty bitter towards him. But that is running back Rex Burkhead, who is not shy to waiver wire articles in the past, but he comes in on Week 4's waiver wire article, rostered in just 12% of Yahoo leagues, Travis, but did see a huge uptick in usage in Week 3. Is this something that you see moving forward, continuing, or do you think that this is just maybe someone that you start for just a Week 4 kind of thing and then you see what happens moving forward?
Yeah, it's another spot start for me with Rex Burkhead. You have a lot of things working for Rex at this moment, right? You still have Damian Harris on the short-term IR. You still have James White away from the team because of that tragedy with his parents. And you've got Sony Michel just not looking that sharp. The bottom line here is that the real red zone goal line back for this team is Cam Newton. He's got 11 carries in the red zone so far, but you see what Rex has done. He's got 5 carries himself in the red zone, and he's got a 17% market share for targets as far as the running back is concerned. And actually, as far as the team is concerned. So that's encouraging for a guy like Rex Burkhead while James White is out. This is a nice matchup coming up against Kansas City. where they're going to need to throw the ball to stay within the game, and that could mean Rex Burkhead is used quite a bit. So, yes, pick him up if you don't get Caros Hyde, and you could feel comfortable starting him this week as a flex, because if he gets the work again, he could be valuable. I mean, he saw 3 touchdowns last week just based on that red zone usage. You like what you saw there out of Rex Burkhead.
All right, and then this next guy we're going to talk about here, this third running back, is probably my favorite running back to pick up of the group here. Rostered on only 23% of Yahoo leagues, Jeff Wilson Jr. We talked about this on last week's show about how he might be a sneaky snart for last week and a easy option to go and grab on your waiver wire because a lot of people weren't lurking his direction. And he might sneak through your waiver wire this week as well. Tell the people, tell Whisper Nation about Jeff Wilson, what to expect, what to like, what to dislike about him.
Yeah, so Wilson ended up out-touching Jerick McKinnon last week. McKinnon came out of the game with a rib injury, but he did get some decent usage there. I've been reading, and it looks like the McKinnon injury isn't that serious. So you could see a situation where Wilson is splitting time yet again. They also called up JaMychal Hasty from the practice squad. You also have Raheem Mostert may be able to practice this week. So there are some things working here, and that's because of all that cloudiness. That's why Wilson made it to the 3rd spot on my list. Could have even maybe been the 4th spot, but I do like Wilson's upside as a red zone back for this offense. You even saw Brandon Aiyuk getting carries in this offense. So there's a lot of moving parts in San Francisco, as always. But if you can nail the guy that week, you know it's super profitable. I would just temper expectations on Wilson season long because of Shanahan's ability to kind of do smoke and mirrors. But Wilson is definitely intriguing and a guy you should look at if you're in need of running back help.
So one last running back I want to mention. We won't dive into him too much because I want to give Whisper Nation the chance of hearing some guys that we'd probably drop for one of these running backs. But I also do like Brian Hill, a guy that is only rostered on 3% of Yahoo leagues. If you have a bench spot and maybe you don't need a running back right now, maybe your team is pretty stacked. And you can look, and maybe you're sitting at 3-0, right? You can look a little bit further down the road, and there's a guy that I would pick up would be Brian Hill, Travis, and throw him on my bench because he looked great. He passed the eye test. Todd Gurley isn't looking phenomenal this year. He did have a really nice day. He got both of the touchdowns. But if anything were to happen to Todd Gurley, which wouldn't be a surprise considering his health issues, Brian Hill could be a guy that is on a very good Atlanta offense that could see a lot of touches if anything were to happen to Todd Gurley. But, Travis, I want to give more importantly, some guys that maybe you might consider dropping for any of these guys on this list. And there are several more running backs. I want to let Whisper Nation know there are several more running backs that Travis has written up on this waiver wire article. You can find it at thefantasywhispers.com, or I will also leave a link in the description below, so you just click on that and it'll take you right over to that article if you want to read more about some of these other guys. But Travis, let me ask you, would you drop, because adding is easy. We could tell you who to add. That's simple. But who do you drop? That's the difficult decision. So would you drop any of the major handcuffs to the players in order to pick up one of these guys? So Tony Pollard, Alexander Madison, Chase Edmonds, those guys, would you drop any of them? Benny Snell, would you drop any of those guys for a Jeff Wilson, for a Caros Hyde, or a Rex Burkhead?
So that is kind of the cutoff there, because you talked about Brian Hill a little bit, and that's kind of where the cliff falls off in the waiver article, because Brian Hill is essentially a handcuff to Todd Gurley, right? So if we look at Jeff Wilson, Rex Burkhead, Caros Hyde, these are guys you could look at potentially starting this week, depending on what's going to happen. Caros Hyde, with the extent of Chris Carson's injury, could be a spot start for a couple weeks. So here's the bottom line: if you're 0-3, maybe even 1-2, and you're not putting up major points, and you're out of a CMC or you're out of a Saquon, and you need to start getting wins and points, yes, I would drop those handcuffs, especially if you're not the guy who's rostering the starter. I would drop those handcuffs in order to get points on your team right now. Now, if you can afford it, I would keep those handcuffs over a guy like Caros Hyde, Rex Burkhead, if you're 3-0, and you're just kind of waiting to see what happens, because a guy like Chase Edmonds, a guy like Alexander Madison, a guy like Tony Pollard, if anything were to happen to the guy ahead of him, that's an RB2 at least for the rest of the season, and then you're looking at a RB1 in some instances. So the upside is just too valuable if you can afford it. But like I said, if you're in desperate times, yes, I would look at dropping those guys.
And what I would also maybe suggest as well for people who have those handcuffs, maybe they're sitting at 0-3 or 1-2, and they're a little bit worried and thinking about dropping one of those handcuffs, I would actually go to the person who has the, Ezekiel Elliott owner or the Dalvin Cook owner, and knowing that you were going to maybe think about dropping him and try to get some value. Maybe they'll give you some fob for him, or maybe you can get another player, or you can trade two players for one. And, you never know what you might be able to do with that. So I like that stuff. The last guy I'll throw out there, Travis, Tevin Coleman. Would you drop Tevin Coleman for any of these guys?
Yeah, I believe you can drop Tevin Coleman, and you probably could have dropped him last week. He did head to the IR. If you have the IR spot, maybe you want to stash him and you need RB depth. I get that. But Tevin Coleman didn't look very good in the offense so far, has the knee issue, and just seems to be not able to hold up over the last couple of years. So I would be okay moving on, especially with Jerick McKinnon and Jeff Wilson showing good production in this offense behind him.
All right, Travis, so enough with the running backs. Let's move to the wide receivers, because there is a plethora of injuries at the wide receiver position. Just ask my dynasty team and my listener league team, because it has been ravished by the wide receiver bug here. So let's name some wide receivers that are available in the vast majority of Yahoo leagues that you might want to go and take a look at. The first one here is I'm a big fan of this player. I was all off season. It hasn't looked the best as far as his routes ran in the first 2 weeks. Of course, I'm talking about Anthony Miller of the Chicago Bears, but there is a new sheriff in town, Travis, and it has me excited. So tell Whisper Nation why they should get excited about Anthony Miller and Nick Foles in Chicago.
So here's the bottom line, is that Anthony Miller has scored 2 touchdowns in 3 games. He scored the game-winning touchdown last week after Nick Foles was put into the game. Nick Foles came in and led 3 touchdown scoring drives, including that game winner to Anthony Miller. Anthony Miller has run 85% of his routes from the slot. Routes from the slot is where he's ran. And we know in Nick Foles' past, he loves to target the tight end, the slot receiver. He likes to take what the defense gives him. And I think this bodes really well for Anthony Miller. This is a guy we drafted, and then dropped if you were getting frustrated. It's not a guy that's just been sitting on waivers. It's not a nobody. We know he's got the skill, and I think he is my favorite for long-term season value now that they've turned to Nick Foles as the starter. This is kind of what we talked about. If you had trepidation with the pass catchers in Chicago, it was because of Mitch Trubisky. But now that Foles is the starter, you like what you see here, not only for Allen Robinson, but especially for Anthony Miller. And I think he's got great season-long value now that he is the starter.
And then you look at the schedule upcoming too as well, Travis, and they should be trailing in a lot of those games, which was the problem before, was that the Bears were winning in most of these games until late. And so Anthony Miller didn't see this field a lot because they weren't playing a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. Well, that should change considering that they should be behind in a lot now. So love that pickup. The next one, though, I might be just a little bit more excited about, Travis, because I have been touting this guy and really excited all offseason just because the ceiling is just so high for this player. And, of course, I'm talking about the one, the only, dare I say, Pat Mahomes' new best friend, Mecole Hardman, who is only rostered on 31% of Yahoo leagues. But, Travis, tell Whisper Nation why they might want to try to get as excited about as Mecole Hardman as me. Or should they temper their expectations for Mecole Hardman?
Mecole Hardman is second on my list, which this list became kind of the Johnny Game Time fanboy list here a little bit, because it does have Anthony Miller and Mecole Hardman on it. But the bottom line is simple, man. The upside is there. You talked about the ceiling with this. Mecole Hardman has league-winning upside, and that is a fact because he runs a 4.33 340. He has been times clocked faster than Tyreek Hill in an offense where Pat Mahomes just seems to be getting warmed up. He had a couple first weeks where he looked a little rusty. Man, he knocked that rust off on Monday night, throwing dimes all over the field, throwing touchdowns to linemen and fullbacks, but also a touchdown to Mecole Hardman on a 49-yard thing of beauty that he threw down the field, okay? You like to see 6 targets for Mecole Hardman, 4 catches, 81 yards, and that touchdown. Nearly had another touchdown, Johnny, on another bomb, but dropped it. And this wasn't any kind of secondary. This was a good Baltimore secondary that Mecole Hardman was showing up and showing out on Monday night. You know, if Demarcus Robinson is going to continue to struggle in this offense, Sammy Watkins, we know he hasn't had a clean bill of health. Mecole Hardman has a lot of factors. If anything were to happen to Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce even, you could see Mecole Hardman get a boost in targets, and these targets are incredibly valuable. I would be scooping up Mecole Hardman everywhere I could because we've seen enough now in week 3 to know that the upside and the ceiling are there.
All right, Travis, jumping over from a second-year wide receiver to a rookie wide receiver, which we always talk about, or a couple of rookie wide receivers, I should say. We always talk about the inconsistency of the rookie wide receiver position, but Justin Jefferson, welcome to the NFL, my friend, had himself an absolute field day in week 3. Travis, he's only rostered in 34% of Yahoo leagues, but it should be higher. But is this going to be something that is going to be a more long-term solution, or do you think it's more of a high upside stash, if anything?
It's hard to peg it. Just because he is a rookie, you're going to see some inconsistencies out of his game. We have seen reports coming out of camp. I mean, the big deal, Johnny, was that he was a slot stud in college with Joe Burrow, and he was coming to an offense that watched Stephon Diggs vacate a bunch of targets, and he was a first-round pick. And so we thought he would be this guy that they would just lean on, and the volume was there, and it was undeniable. Well, he had a bad camp, and he ended up not being the starter, and he ended up starting behind Olabisi Johnson. Well, I believe that part is over. I believe he's kind of worked through that situation, and he will continue to see work. But there's 2 things working against him here. One, he is a rookie. We'll see inconsistencies there as he tries to learn how to beat man and press coverage. But 2, he plays for the Minnesota Vikings, who I just can't trust right now on offense, and I don't know that I'm going to be trusting him season long. But the bottom line is he's number 3 on this list because of the role he played. He had 9 targets. You know, a massive 25 yards per reception in this game. So, yeah, this could be his best game ever. He scored that touchdown, nearly doubled Thielen's targets. But you like what you saw, and you can stash him on your bench, and hopefully you can listen to us, and we can pick the right matchups for you to take advantage of those matchups.
Love that. A couple of other wide receivers we'll just quickly mention. We have Brandon Aiyuk, Andy Isabella, and Chase Claypool on this article. If you want to read more wide receivers to pick up on this week's waiver wire, make sure you head on over to the fantasywhispers.com, and you can find the full article there, as well as in a link in the description below. Travis, I want to say to Whisper Nation, too, that we called Andy Isabella on Friday's show, which was a live show, as well as Sundays.
You called that, brother. You called that. I got to give you all the credit there on Andy Isabella, who was a guy you said, look, if we wanted Christian Kirk to happen and he was out with injury, we've got to believe that Andy Isabella is a thing or could be a thing. And that's essentially what I said in the article here. We knew that if Cliff Kingsbury could get this offense going, that there was going to be somebody outside of DeAndre Hopkins to catch passes, whether that was Larry or Christian Kirk. No, it's Andy Isabella so far, and he had a little bit of a coming out party himself last week after the week before catching a nice long pass from Kyler Murray as well. So you like what you see there, another stash that could be worth it, that could really pop in a lot of games, especially shootout games.
I just wanted to bring that up, not to make a victory lap or anything like that, but it was certainly to say to make sure you join us, Whisper Nation, on Fridays, on Sundays when we go live before the games, because we give out gems throughout, and then sometimes we give out good ones like that, and you sometimes are able to beat the waiver wire. So make sure you join us on those. All right, Travis, I want to ask you a couple of guys that you would maybe drop for either some of these guys that we talked about on today's show, or some of the ones that are on your list on this waiver wire article. All right, would you drop Mike Williams for let's say any of the top 3 wide receivers that we talked about? Anthony Miller, Mecole Hardman, Justin Jefferson.
would drop Mike Williams for Anthony Miller and Mecole Hardman. I think that if you believe that Mike Williams is a project and he could potentially see more targets with Herbert down the stretch, then maybe you hang on to Mike Williams for a guy like Justin Jefferson, who we really don't know if this was just a flash in the pan or could be another guy that's sitting on your bench. But Miller and Hardman's upside, especially Hardman's, for season long is something you want to take advantage of.
All right, this one might be a little bit difficult decision here. T.Y. Hilton or Anthony Miller or Mecole Hardman? Which one would you?
T.Y. Hilton is a guy that I still think is a buy low. I would hold one more week on T.Y. Hilton. I think they're still trying to figure out that chemistry with him and Phillip Rivers. I think the problem here is that we keep seeing other injuries in that wide receiving core, and so it doesn't really give you confidence that T.Y. Hilton it gives you confidence that T.Y. Hilton should be able to get some more targets down the stretch here. You know, if he catches that touchdown last week against the Vikings in the end zone, we're not talking about T.Y. Hilton right now. So I think that's another thing to keep in mind.
All right, I'm going to give you two more wide receiver names, and we'll quickly give bonuses of some quarterbacks to pick up and a couple tight ends. All right, would you drop Brandon Cooks or Keelan Cole for any of these guys?
I would drop Keelan Cole for Anthony Miller and Mecole Hardman. I would hang on to Brandon Cooks. I think that Brandon Cooks actually could start to see some more usage here as the Texans' schedule opens up.
All right.
He was overthrown on a touchdown on Sunday, and had he been connected with, we probably wouldn't be talking about him here.
For sure. Love those, and I agree with those as well. All right, let's dive in. Let's give them a tight end that it might be available on their waiver wire, considering they might have Dallas Goedert on their team, who will now be out a couple of weeks. Maybe they have another tight end that's not really panning out for them. Who is a tight end that you like, not only this weekend, but maybe moving forward as a staple for an offense?
I love Allie Cox. Johnny, I think this is a guy that's only rostered in 10% of leagues, should be rostered in more, and this is probably your last chance to get Allie Cox. He followed up 111 scoreless yards against the Minnesota Vikings by scoring 52 yards and a touchdown on just 3 catches last week. Now, Jack Doyle is a huge part of this offense. I can hear somebody now telling me that Jack Doyle is a great run blocker and that he's going to continue to be on the field, and I get that. It's true. But we've had injuries to Paris Campbell, Michael Pittman, and this offense is seeing T.Y. Hilton not be that productive, which means there's room for another guy who is productive and within the realm of Phillip Rivers' ability to get to the ball or get the ball to that player, and that is Allie Cox. We know that Rivers loves tight ends. We know that Allie Cox has a background in basketball and is this yards after catch machine. I just see this guy, and he's a good football player, and he's doing some big things for this offense. You like what you see there, and I think he's going to be interesting down the stretch here. I would snag him up, especially if you lost Goddard, if you lost Blake Jarwin back a couple weeks ago, and tight end just hasn't done it for you. You should go with Allie Cox.
Love that. All right, let's grab a quarterback. Let's say you have Carson Wentz on your team, and it is not going well for you. Who would you consider picking up on the waiver wire as a quarterback streamer this week?
I'd be looking at Ryan Fitzpatrick, even if it's just for this week alone. Ryan Fitzpatrick will face the Seattle Seahawks. Nobody is giving more points except for Atlanta to the quarterback position. Nobody is giving more points in the league to the wide receiver position than Seattle. It is the NFL's best pass funnel at this point. And their quarterback is Russell Wilson, who is cooking and putting up points in droves, which means the opposing team's going to need to keep up. Well, Miami has weapons. They low-key have some stacked weapons. Mike Gesicki, Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, all very good pass catchers for a guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick, who has put up in the past with Tampa Bay and with the Jets 30, 40, 50-point games for you in fantasy. He's a guy you can stream at least this week, and a guy who has post-game interviews where he's putting his chest fur out there and telling his wife to put the kids to bed just because he's got swag on 100. We love Fitzmagic. You should love him this week, and I think if you picked up Tannehill and started him and he let you down, you go with a guy like Fitzpatrick over Wentz or Tannehill, and you're feeling good about it this week.
All right, Whisper Nation, that does it for our Week 4 Waiver Wire show. If you want to get the full breakdown of all of these guys and the back knowledge on why we would pick them up, make sure you head on over to thefantasywhisperers.com. Check out the waiver wire articles, as well as there's a link in the description below. If you're new to our channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button, hitting that bell so you get notified anytime we drop new content. Till next time, that is Big Trav. You can find him on Twitter at Big Travy TFW. You can find me on Twitter at Johnny_Game Time. Until next time, we're the Fantasy Whisperers, and we're out. Peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Whisperers podcast. You can hear more from John and Travis on Google Play, SoundCloud, and iTunes. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at TF Whisperers.